All right, Patrick, next we're going to talk about Ontario's population. Now, all of Canada has seen pretty incredible population growth in the last couple of years. Immigration is really fueling that. Ontario is the number one place where most people come into, and then from there they disperse. Let's talk about Ontario's population growth because, as you mentioned in various other times, the East Coast cannot be a pressure valve for Ontario or for GTA's population growth. It just doesn't make sense. Where is Ontario's population growth going, and what's Ontario going to do? Because if they don't do something about housing soon, this issue is only going to compound and get worse and get worse and get worse.
This is such a huge topic right now. And as we're doing this particular segment, we just saw Trudeau speak to immigration, where he said immigration is actually good for immigration. It was some ridiculous comment that he made. And, let's just break it down. At the end of the day, we've got a lot of people coming into this country, planned immigration. In other words, people coming here, not just for work visas, but they want to be permanent residents. Then you've got refugees who are likely to turn into permanent residents. And then you got non-permanent residents. So you've got hundreds of thousands of people coming into the country. We know that they're going to land in Ontario. They're going to land in Montreal, Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. But what's happening in Ontario specifically is that you still got record growth, population growth. But when you look over the past couple of years, you start to see that it's starting to kind of slow down a little bit. You've still got net positive growth, which is great. Good news. But at the end of the day, affordability is driving people into other regions. We talked about East Coast, but then you look west, you look to Alberta, and you start to see just how many people are moving into that particular province. And on that side of it, all of this is driven by a couple of fundamentals, JG, which is there are jobs across the country. So when people are coming in, they're looking at what's happening in Southern Ontario. They're finding jobs in some of these regions, but ultimately they're going to affordability. They're drifting to affordability, which means East Coast, which means Alberta, Saskatchewan, and primarily. And you start to see that is what people are looking for. They need work and they want to be able to have a great lifestyle or build a lifestyle because they've got good jobs and it's affordable. So that's what's happening in the Ontario region. I want to go back to the segment we did on construction and speak to non-permanent residents, and then I'll turn it over to you. But we see that the construction side of things is slowing down. The cost of construction is high, so we're not building as many houses. We are in fact building more apartment buildings. By the way, this is something that we have to consider with the non-permanent resident side of it. Now, here's the thing about this. There is a little underlying risk here, is that if construction slows down and we've got non-permanent residents coming in, several 100,000 of them, by the way, they're actually filling the jobs that we needed filled. We were labor shortage. But if construction slows down, given how big a part of construction is of Canada's economy, of GDP growth, then we're going to start to see that those non-permanent residents are going to be eventually leaving because there's not enough work here. When they leave, rental demand will come down. Now, I'm pointing this out not as a catastrophic thing, but as investors look at that multifamily space, they are building, so they're building more units. And then right now, there's a huge demand with non-permanent residents, which have a tendency to go to those units. So when we look down the road, we have to look at it and say there is that underlying risk, if you will, that we're going to see rental rates spike, particularly in that multifamily unit specific apartment buildings.
Yeah, I think I got a couple thoughts on this, Patrick. The first one is that there's such a shortage in the trades business, in the construction business, that we can easily absorb a slowdown. And this is just, being in the business myself. There's no doubt that a slowdown people wouldn't run for the hills because there's always work to be done in this business. No doubt about it. And the outgoing, your generation, by the way, you're to blame for this, Patrick. Just so you know, you're to blame. It's you and those friggin' baby boomers that are all retiring, all moving down south, all moving to the Caribbean. Now you're leaving us millennials. I don't even want to put myself in that category because I'm older than that. But the next generation has to pick up this slack, and we don't have enough labor to do it. And as a result, we need all the immigration we can get that is going to work in that business. And I'm not sure, by the way, how many do work in that business or do end up finding their way in that business. So that, there's an interesting issue there that's developing, possibly. But I do want to talk about the net population growth in Ontario because You brought this up. It's a very, very good point. But if you look at this chart that I put on the screen now with the green bars, I mean, just look at from 2009 to 2016, it was about 250,000 people, net population growth by 2-year period. About 250,000 people was kind of the average. And then it jumped up in 2017. This is way before the pandemic, by the way. We can't blame any of this on the current government. It jumped way up over 400,000, and it's declining a little bit, but my gosh, it's still way above its average, is my point. And how do we wrap this topic up in a nice little bow? The bottom line is there's not enough supply for all this incoming migration and immigration coming in. And you know what? More people have to go from Ontario to Alberta, or Ontario to Saskatchewan, or Ontario to the East Coast, because unless we're going to fix a supply issue, which is our insurance policy as real estate investors, this problem only compounds and gets worse over time.
Yeah, I think, what the message we can get in this particular segment, and we'll speak to it a little bit more, is, investors need to, if you're forewarned, you're forearmed, which is that as these things start to shift, they're going to make epic headlines around it. They're going to be those clickbait headlines that we have to pay attention to and not buy into. Again, we have to say, look behind the curtain, look behind the headline at what the reality of it is, because if construction starts to slow down, if non-permanent residents start to leave, then we're going to see really big headlines, and it's going to be very dramatic. And so just know that there's a very good chance that we're going to start seeing those headlines in the coming months.
Excellent. Ontario's population growth covered. Oh, good shot. Yes.
If you're interested in learning about investing in real estate the right way, look at our Real Estate Investing in Canada program. 15 steps to successfully investing in real estate. Thousands of real estate investors have learned the right way to invest in real estate following those 15 steps. You're absolutely going to love that program. Take a look, click on the link in the description below.
If you want to see more stuff like this, click here. If you want to see the entire show, click there.